So India, just like the UK, runs on a parliamentary system, and the idea is that so the seats have already basically been counted. It's already over. That's so the results, and we can get into it in a second, but are that Modi lost his majority. So the BJP outright lost their majority, which means there's a bit of sort of tension within the NDA, which is their sort of coalition, the BJP-led coalition. So there's a lot of questions and doubts as to what the other major parties in that coalition are demanding from the BJP. A lot of the demands, I'm just going to be honest, are absolutely ridiculous. It's just them trying to. Am I allowed to swear on here?
Yep,
of course.
Okay, yeah, it's them trying to
encourage
it. It's basically those parties trying to, whip their dick on the table. That's basically it.
Yeah.
So the demands that they're making are, they're quite ridiculous, and there's a lot of there's this. I guess you can sort of. We'll get into it in a second, but like most of the things that I've heard from the grapevines right now are like this coalition is not going to last. BJP's coalition isn't going to last that long.
So that'll trigger a new election, similar to like other parliamentary systems.
So what I think might happen is they might end up switching to the India coalition if the other guys don't get their way. Because there's a lot of the India coalition is the opposition coalition. It used to be called the UPA, United Progressive Alliance, and in a stroke of what I would consider to be marketing genius, they actually called the alliance India. Because it's a great. I mean, I watched John Oliver's segment.
Yeah, that was awesome. It's in the name.
I was tearing my hair out half the time. Half the time, John Oliver got a lot of it right. I'll give him credit for that. But a lot of the stuff where it was like, oh, Modi's gonna win, or like, Rahul Gandhi has the main opposition, or I guess the figurehead of the opposition he has no chance. When he was saying that stuff, I was just like, oh God, not again, not this again. Because the coverage of it all from, I guess, Al Jazeera, even Al Jazeera was glazing up Modi the entire time. They basically treated Modi's victory as like guaranteed. And I was like, you guys do not know what the hell you're talking about. So I was tearing my hair out the entire election when I was watching the audience is like, my audience knows that I was like losing my mind every single time I watched BBC, but there's a lot we can get into. If you have any more questions, go ahead and ask. If you want to know more about me, if you want to learn more about India, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll bring in Rebecca here. Rebecca just joined. Hey, Rebecca, how's it going?
Hi, guys. It's going good.
Hey.
Hope you're doing well.
Thank you. Hope you guys are doing well. Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you, Rebecca.
Yeah, nice to meet you. It's weird. I was saying to you, it's weird just like talking to you guys for the first time. I just listen to this all the time.
Oh, really?
It's just strange. It's like I know you all so well, even though it's first meeting.
It's parasocial. We're awful.
We're all in parasocial relationships with each other. Yeah. So Aaron, can you kind of explain?
Oh, it's Arun.
Arun, sorry. Can you explain just to American and Canadian audiences, like Modi, if you watch, your introduction into Indian politics, if you watch like John Oliver, Modi is a very Trumpian figure. And can you give us a little bit of a primer on Modi and the general?
And I have a follow up to that because in the interest of, I'm often calling Modi a fascist. Do you also think, as someone who's obviously striving towards Hindu nationalism and the ethnic cleansing of Muslims in the country and stuff like that, is he, if he could possibly be ousted, would he do something else to try and retain power if he can't do it through diplomatic negotiations in parliament?
So I'll take Mike's question first. So first off, Mike's question is, if I remember correctly, so basically who Modi is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Modi is, I wouldn't necessarily call him a Trump-like figure. I feel like, in a sense, Trump is a lot more flamboyant, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So this dude is, I guess, I don't like comparing. I don't like that comparison for some reason, but it just feels like it feels like a weird comparison to make because there are figures in India that you could more easily compare to Trump. And also like Indian politics is just like in general like a lot more in American politics, there's a sort of respectability politics that's played. There's like a threshold where like American politics won't ever go under. Like you can't just, there you have to maintain some sort of like air of respectability. But in India, that doesn't exist, or it exists in its most minimal form. So in a sense, like you'll have politicians, people in government going on stage giving speeches and just cursing out other politicians, just straight up, like no one cares. Like I was just watching a guy from my home state of Tamil Nadu, and he was just cursing, left and right. He's like, "Fuck you! This dude's a motherfucker. Modi's his dad. I fucked his mom. All of it, right? Like, and this dude's a guy in government, by the way. He's like a minister, so he doesn't get like. We have speeches like this all the time. It's very, like, it's a totally different vibe in India, right? But Modi, before he was prime minister of India, he actually was the chief minister. So the chief minister position in India is basically the state level prime minister. So similar to how I guess in America you have, we also have governors in India, but in India, the chief minister is the one that's elected, whereas governors are appointed basically by the central government. Basically, the idea is so Modi is he's a lot more. So in 2002, he was actually chief minister, and there were actually huge anti-Muslim riots in Gujarat, his home state. Roughly 2,000 people died, right? So I would say that Modi, I guess, is a far more dangerous figure than Trump is, in a sense. He's a significantly more ideologically minded fascist.
The US as well.
What?
He was banned from coming from the US, I think.
The State Department actually, the US banned him because of the pogroms in Gujarat in 2002. They were forced to unban him immediately once he became prime minister. So once he became prime minister, they were forced
to
not
do commerce with India, right?
Huh?
I was like, they can't not do commerce with India. They're not just going to be able to.
Yeah, they can't. That. That's
This is just a non-starter.
So Modi is, in a sense, yes, he is he's effectively a Nazi. You can basically say. So in order to understand what all of this is, the Bharatiya Janata Party is just one wing of this overall organization called the Sangh Parivar, and the Sangh Parivar is basically a far right, far right is not doing it. They're basically an organization, the largest of which is the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the RSS. And the RSS, one, they are ideologically directly inspired by the Nazis, by the SS, right? By the Nazis. And they take a lot of their uniforms and a lot of their organizational tactics from Mussolini's Italian fascists, right? So you can kind of think of the RSS as like the latest version of like those classical fascists in that sense. So the RSS has been around for quite a while, and the RSS, one of its members back in like the early 1900s was a guy called Nathuram Godse, and Nathuram Godse was the guy that assassinated Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, right? And so that should give you an idea, because Gandhi wasn't like anti-Muslim enough, right? So that should give you and BJP is basically considered the political party, the electoral wing of the RSS. So RSS will make these, 50-year machinations, and then the BJP is basically their people that are supposed to be in power, right? They're the ones that are supposed to be the electoral wing of the Sangh Parivar and the RSS. And there are multiple different organizations within the RSS. If you want to, in the Sangh Parivar, if you want to learn more about Hindutva in general, my friend Rohan Davis on YouTube, he actually made a really good video on Hindutva, on Hindu nationalism. Highly recommend it. It's like a great explanation, because he's from Kerala. He's from the state that like borders my home state. And so he gets it. He understands exactly what's going on, and he's able to basically explain to a Western audience as to like what's going on. As to Lance's question, do you think Modi will pull a January 6th? He's already tried. He's already been trying to rig the polls, so I wouldn't put it past the BJP. And the BJP is not known for, I guess, being nice in a sense. They do. The BJP does incite a lot of riots, and their sister organizations like the ABVP, the Bajrang Dal, and all of these like far right Hindu nationalist organizations. They do incite like anti-Muslim, often anti-Sikh riots as well, because they're also a long time ago during the 80s there was a movement for a separate state called Khalistan. So they'll a lot of whom actually a lot of people moved to Canada from India because of
into British Columbia.
British Columbia. I know, I know a bunch of people in British Columbia that are Punjabis. Yeah, I mean, but it's more than that though. Like, it's not just that they're anti-Muslim, and it's not just they're anti-Sikh and they're anti-Christian, right? Christians are also persecuted in India, and the RSS's next project right now is to persecute Christians, especially in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Their overall thing is they want to reinforce caste in India. So they want to reinforce Brahminical rule in India. They want to reinforce a system where the Brahmins ultimately have, the Brahmins are the priest class, the various different castes like Ayir, Iyengar, Nambudris, like all those different Brahmin castes, right? They're the ones that ultimately hold the political power in India. They want to institute a much more rigid system of that, where, for example, especially the Brahmins within the RSS and all these organizations, they want to get rid of affirmative action for the most oppressed caste in India, which is called reservation. So the BJP, I guess, what do you call it? The BJP, what do you call this? The hole, the rabbit hole, that goes even further than you think it does. It goes significantly further. There's every form of bigotry you can think of, whether it be on the basis of language, because they're also another project of the RSS and BJP is this thing called Hindi imposition, which is the enforcement of one particular language upon the rest of India. So India has hundreds of languages spoken in its borders, right? And it has, there's a part of the constitution called the 8th schedule, which basically lists like 22, 23 languages as having some sort of national status. And the official languages of India are Hindi and English. They want to make it so that Hindi is the only official language. And some even within the BJP and the RSS would much rather have Sanskrit be the official language, and Sanskrit itself is a Brahminical language, right? It is the language of the Brahmins. So they ultimately want to enforce not just a religious system, but they also think that minorities within India are different races, and it's actually kind of a race science thing that's going on here as well. But I've said a lot. It's a lot to take in, but if you have any more questions, just hit me up.
Arun, I'm curious about. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
I just have one. Is there anything to be hopeful about? Like,
well, the fact that he didn't win a majority, that's huge.
So fucking
the BJP. Okay, I'll say this: the BJP they just took an L, so they just took a massive L.
That's good.
But a lot of the problems that I'm saying are not going to be fixed by, like, caste is not a thing that's going to be fixed. Like, they technically made untouchability illegal like several decades ago, right? When India was made independent, and untouchability is like it's like what defines caste in a sense, right? It's basically there's certain people, like the way untouchability works and what like Dalit people are is that they're specifically defined as untouchable in according to the Brahminical, I guess, religious system, right? And there's also a connection between the Brahmins and the British as well, which leads into the whole concept of Aryanism, which I don't want to get into yet. But basically, the idea is the idea of untouchability is that there are certain people who are considered ritually impure or racially impure in a sense, and so they're not allowed to enter they're not allowed to enter temples. They're not allowed to enter certain establishments. They have to stay in Kerala, especially for a long time. there's a concept called unapproachability, meaning people, like if you're born into a particular caste, you had to be, you know, at least several hundred meters away from the upper caste.
Wow.
And there's a extreme in which there's something even called unseeability, which is the idea that you cannot, if you come from this particular caste, like that is considered unseeable, you are not allowed to enter out in the day. You must enter out only at night.
What?
So that's another thing that's a part of the caste system, right? So so those levels of extremes we don't see anymore, like unseeability to the same degree. We don't see that anymore, but untouchability is still a problem throughout India. So there are certain groups of people that are, you know, we call Dalits now, right? They used to be called the untouchables, but untouchables is no longer a good name, is no longer an appropriate name. They're called Dalits because according to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Baba Saheb, Jai Bhim, Dalit is a term meaning broken. Basically, they were broken by the system. They were made to be in that position by by caste, basically, by the concept of caste. So where does all this tie back into Hindu nationalism, right? So right now, the very concept of Hindu unity, that, like, because the thing you have to understand about India is that there is no ethnic majority in India. There's no ethnic group in India that can claim a majority. So if you go to Sri Lanka, for example, just across the border, it's obvious that the Sinhalese there are the majority, right? If you go to Russia, for example, ethnic Russians are the majority there, obviously, right? But in India, there's no such concept, right? There is no absolute ethnic majority. There's no linguistic majority, right? There is no such thing, right? Hindi, which is considered the linguistic majority, is only natively spoken by about 20 to 40% of the population. So there is no majority in India. So part of the Hindu nationalist project is to artificially create a majority called Hindus, right? And this actually dates back to the British colonial times. But the idea is that they want to create this sort of artificial unified Hindu bloc against whom they deem outsiders or racially impure in a sense, which are Muslims and Christians. And they also, a lot of the early bigotry against Muslims in India actually very much echoes anti-Semitism. So it's basically not the sort of Jewish cabal kind of conspiracy theory, although that the Jewish cabal, except for Muslims, does exist. That conspiracy theory exists in Sri Lanka. So just next door, that's a whole another can of worms I don't want to open. But the original bigotry against Muslims was that they're only loyal to their own people. They can never be loyal to the sons of the soil, that sort of thing. So some of the earliest forms of like anti-Muslim bigotry in India actually echoes anti-Semitism. And obviously, no surprise, much of the early RSS guys were pro-Hitler. They loved Hitler. They were around for Hitler and they loved Hitler. Right? So again, a lot of info to take in, but hopefully you're able to take something away from that.
Yeah,
well, I just want to say, without changing topic, happy, Antifa won on D-Day, everybody. Antifa, Team Antifa. Antifa did it.
Right.
I just got a question because we're talking about like anti-Semitism and like obviously with Modi. If you could elaborate on this, maybe. So obviously, what I find interesting about India is, like with Israel, the person who assassinated someone like Gandhi, or I think it's who's the guy in the 1990s in Israel who did the peace deal and got assassinated?
I know who you're talking about. I know who you're talking about. I don't remember though. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I was going to say Begin, but Begin's the terrorist guy. It's the other one. But anyway, so there's
Yitzhak Rabin.
Yeah, Rabin. So he was assassinated by someone who's basically egged on by Netanyahu, and then Netanyahu's now the prime minister. And like you were saying with the RSS and the BJP, the RSS killed Gandhi because he was on that hunger strike to give aid to Pakistan or something like that. And in terms of the trajectory, it's quite similar in terms of now that's the ruling ideology. But in terms of the actual, when you were saying about the project, it was reminding me a lot of Israel. And I know India has now you can elaborate on this, but like it seems it's gone from in the past being more pro-Palestinian to now majority pro-Israel. Is that just a result of Modi's like rhetoric around like creating this basically like ethno-state in India, and now their support for Israel more broadly, or is that to do more of like Kashmir and stuff, like claims to that, like, or is it like a mixture of all of it?
So I think we have to separate the official stance of India versus what you're seeing online.
Yeah.
So the official stance of India with regards to Palestine has not changed since 1947, since they got independence. Their official, not 1940, their stance has not changed, and that is the recognition of a state of Palestine, two-state solution, pre-1967 borders. India's official position on Palestine is significantly better than the West position by far.
Yeah,
and that is a vestige of the fact that they were a colonial, they're a post-colonial state. So they were dealing directly with the British, and on top of that, they got independence from the British. They fought a revolution against the British, and then immediately after that, what happened was they were one of the big leaders of the non-aligned movement. So they were considered sort of like, especially within the region of South Asia, India was kind of a beacon they were kind of like the leader in the non-aligned movement in a sense. Yeah. They were the country that was, you could kind of say, is a post-colonial state, and they were basically they were leading the way in like anti-colonialism in a sense. They were viewed as that way for quite a while. The hatred that you're seeing for Palestinians coming from Hindu nationalists, that just comes straight down to Islamophobia.
Yeah.
There's nothing more to it, honestly. I don't think there's much more to it. They'll also say like, Israel, Israel helped India with, Kashmir against Pakistan. That's another reason that they'll throw in. But if you actually look at like most of what they're up to, it's just mostly hatred for Muslims. That's about it.
Okay.
That's literally it. It's not much deeper than that. And I wanted to say one thing because it's very easy for people to just look at that. Like a lot of people are seeing what Indians like, what we call Sanghis, RSS supporters, and like far right Hindu nationalists in India say about Palestinians. But you got to remember, they've been saying this shit about. They've been saying that shit about minorities in their own country for like decades. The only reason you're seeing about it now is that they're talking about something that you know about, right?
Yeah.
So like I'll give you a great example. They've been dropping slurs. They continue to drop slurs left and right on Twitter, but you just don't know about it. They're dropping caste slurs left and right.
Mm.
I get called that stuff all the time for sticking up for. I don't come from a marginalized caste or oppressed caste at all. But like even when I support and I stand up for and I speak out against caste and I advocate for the annihilation of caste and whatnot, I get hit with those slurs. So they drop those slurs left and right. I've been called the N-word online as well, because so there's also a weird dynamic in that there's also a tension between North and South India. It's a sublimated tension, in that. And Indians in the audience will, like, I guarantee you, like, Indians will be like, oh, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. This guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Oh, he's an NRI. He's an American. Like, I trust. Spare me. I've lightly pushed back on North Indian racism towards South Indians, and I've been literally. Someone hit me with a racist Pokemon meme with the N-word. Please spare me. But they've also, so there's a lot of anti-blackness as well in India. And it also leads back to partially caste, because the most marginalized caste, again, caste is sort of a race-like system. It's kind of like the American race system in that there's a permanence to it. You are born into a particular, a lot of people read caste as like it's a class system. And even though it ultimately did come from a caste system, which is why you can't tell what caste someone is from just by looking at them. It's permanent, like race. You cannot ever change your caste. You were born into a particular caste and you're stuck that way for life. You're done. Like once you're born into a marginalized caste, you have to deal with the possibility of being, there's horrible stories I can bring up left and right, but yeah, you have to deal with this sort of thing around your neck the entire time of like, oh, am I going to live tomorrow? Like, what's going on, right?
Dang.
Yeah.
So, going back to that point, they've been like the Sungis that you're seeing right now. They're talking massive shit about Palestine. They've been doing this to their own like minorities, like to the own marginalized people of India for a long time. It's only now picking up. Only people are only realizing it now because they're talking about like Palestine, which is a hot button issue. That's about it.
I'm curious about Hindu nationalism and how
Mhm.
prominent it's always been, and whether or not Modi popularized it. Maybe it was always lingering and he made it popular. And I'm curious, like with this phenomenon with BJP and Modi, is this surge? And I know that racism has always been a problem and whatnot, but like, is part of it a cult of personality with Modi, or did he really just activate this Hindu nationalism that was already there? Like, can you talk a little bit about that, if that makes sense?
So, Hindu nationalism in India kind of grew, especially under the Manmohan Singh administration, exponentially due to the neoliberal economic reforms and austerity measures that Manmohan Singh instituted. Manmohan Singh was, even though he came from the Congress, he was basically part of the Congress party. He was the guy that basically accelerated the neoliberalism of his predecessor, such as Vajpayee and whatnot. So he was really the guy that also accelerated neoliberalism, especially since the 90s. Hindu nationalism has always been it's always existed for about 100 years, at least 100 years or so. It's been around for a very long time. It's nothing new. It was actually, the RSS was actually banned at some point under under Patel, basically. Vallabhbhai Patel. He banned RSS at some point. I think in some sense, Hindu nationalism's popularity is a bit overestimated, especially with this election. I think everyone was expecting that once the BJP built the Rama temple on the remains of the Babri Masjid, on the Babri Mosque, the Babur Mosque, they assumed that BJP would win with a landslide. In fact, the BJP themselves were going around saying, "Oh, we're going to win, 400 seats, 400 seats, 400 seats." There are 543 seats in parliament, basically. So they were going around saying, like, I think Lok Sabha specifically, but they're like, they were running around saying, "Oh, we're going to win 400 seats. We're going to win 400 seats. We're going to win 400 seats." Like, it's an obscene majority, right? But it didn't happen. And why was that? If you look at what happened in especially the largest state, Uttar Pradesh is a population of about 200 million people, 75%, like 3/4 of the population of the US. That's just one state in India, right? What happened in Western UP was actually the caste tensions between the Rajputs and the BJP overrode the Hindu nationalist, I guess, narrative, right? Which is their material conditions, which they wanted more representation, meaning they wanted more, administrative positions in the BJP administration in Uttar Pradesh, as well as overall. They wanted, and BJP was snubbing them for another caste called Jats, right? So that's one reason why. Another reason is that especially the rural people of India, they realize, they're dealing with rising inflation, right? They're struggling to put food on the table. So they're like, listen, you guys built the temple on top of the mosque, but what does that do for me? You didn't put food on the table. What the hell? So they're also dealing with rising inflation. There's a huge jobs crisis in India. No one's able to get a job, especially youth. The Indian youth are having a huge unemployment crisis. So those sort of, like, people kind of realize, like, oh shit, these guys are screwing us over. Wealth inequality in India is as high, if not higher now than it was when the British ruled India. That's how bad wealth inequality is. like much 80% of India's wealth is run by a handful of corporations, Adani and Ambani, right? So the economic situation of India has spiraled just down, continued to spiral downward, and people realize that. So I think, in a sense, the Hindu nationalism isn't as popular as people think it is, and I think people are. There's this statistic that people love to pull out with regards to Modi, which is like, oh, Modi's like 71% popular, and one, I question the methodology of that a little bit, because India is an obscenely diverse country, and saying it's diverse is not a good way of putting it. It's a patchwork post-colonial state. There's no shot Modi is popular among 71% of the population. If it is, you are basically asking 1 billion people their opinion on Modi. Like the home state that I come from, the state that I come from despises Modi on the whole. We all hate him. The state next door hates him. The state to the northwest, Karnataka, just kicked the BJP out in their own state elections, right? So they're not all like, it's not like, I think Hindu nationalism is quite a bit. I think a lot of people overestimate the popularity of Hindu nationalism in the West, but it is still a problem, right? It's not but I would still say, yes, it's still a huge problem in India. It is a massive problem. But I think like people whip out that 71% statistic and are like, well, I guess like Modi's super popular. And it's like, that's not really true. You're not understanding the ground level situation. But yeah. What was the other question you had, Mike?
No, I was wondering about like whether or not there was this sort of cult of personality around Modi.
Yeah,
and I guess I asked that because as an American, I'm not sure what's happening, and I hear the 70% approval statistic myself, and I think, well, there's got to be like, the best comparison for me, which is a bad comparison, as you said, is Trump. Where there's this like, it's not really driven by policy or ideology; it's just the guy. And I'm curious how much that's the case.
Did you watch the? I would actually. Did you watch that John Oliver special, Mike? I'm just curious because like they showed some.
I did watch it.
Those video clips they showed, it kind of seemed the opposite of Trump, where like Trump's like, there's a camera, I'm gonna say the worst shit you've ever heard in your life, and then with Modi it was like, these are the softballiest of softball setup interviews like I've ever seen. But I don't know if that speaks to
how do you eat a mango?
Does.
Like it's just
I know.
So I can speak to both of those things. So the first thing is like what Lance just alluded to is why I don't like the comparison between Modi and Trump, because Modi, for the longest time, especially when he was in power, he actually wasn't the guy that said the most insane shit. He did say insane shit, and he's an awful dude, right? Just to be clear. But there are people within his party that are far worse than he is, right? A great example is the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi Adityanath, who openly said, if they take one of our Hindu girls, they meaning Muslims, if they take one of our Hindu girls, we'll take 100 of Muslim girls, right? And another thing that that guy said is he basically chanted at a rally, and he basically said, if they even touch one of our Hindus, if they even kill one of our Hindus, there will be 100 Muslims that we. And then he told the crowd to say kill, basically. So even worse. But the irony of that is Yogi's not a lot of people dislike Yogi a lot more than they like Modi, because Modi actually has cultivated this Vishwaguru image of being very charismatic. He's a world statesman. So that is where the similarity with Trump actually does ring really well. It works really well. And it's similar to how you have some hogs in the United States that say like, oh, I want Trump to marry me, or I want to have sex with Trump, or some shit like that. Right? They're like, oh, Trump is so hot or whatever.
Well, it's got unvaccinated sperm, right?
Yeah, it's the
actually, no, it would be vaccinated. He doesn't have pure sperm. Sorry, I withdraw that comment.
I saw like you see the same shit for Modi. Yes, there is a huge cult of personality for Modi. Like Modi's this wise, like wonderful dude. There's a woman online. I don't know. I don't remember if it's real, but like I wouldn't be surprised if it was real. Basically, she was advocating for Modi to impregnate a bunch of donate semen to Indian women to impregnate Indian women,
as you do,
shit, so that the superior sperm, so that his superior sperm can the
master sperm,
we can make super babies.
The uber sperm.
It was and there's another dude that was basically saying like Modi is like the perfect boyfriend or something. Like you do see a cult of personality. Absolutely, you do. There is no question about it.
That's interesting.
I gotta say that's like really funny to me because like, listen, like Trump is obviously a horrible person, but like, I get it. He's a character. He's a character. He's got a whole aura about him. Modi just looks like a guy. Like he's just a guy. Like,
Modi. I mean, the thing with Modi is he speaks in Hindi most of the time, so that's why like you probably don't like. There are memes of him saying like, I mean, I do impressions of him from time to time where he was in Punjab and he was saying like everything's fine or whatever, and like that was turned into a meme. Yeah, so like Modi does have like he's not the most crazy person in the party. There's far worse people in India than Modi. I will say that. Significantly worse people than Modi. But Modi is in a weird sense in the position that he is because he is able to basically cultivate, because he originally also won the support of like the finance bros and like the upper classes of India, like not caste, but like, well, both caste and class, upper caste and upper class people of India that were just, they were more he originally won as like a pro business candidate, which we all know what that means, right? So tax cuts for the rich and whatnot, right? So he won on that. Like he also he originally won the support of like the dumb finance bros and shit. I know a bunch of finance bros that voted for him originally because they're like, he's a good business guy or whatever. So yeah.
That works everywhere. Why?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I mean, sounds familiar.
I will say this. The one thing I guess that does set India apart from the United States is the news. The news, I will say this: the politicians and the news in America is significantly more boring compared to India. That's just a fact. I'm sorry to say this. Like, they're one of the most famous clips that I talk about or that I show people. I showed Hassan this the other day or a couple days ago. There's a guy from this outfit called the Karni Sena, and it's a bit complicated to explain what Karni Sena is, but they're basically like a caste outfit, which is like they're a group dedicated to advocating the supremacy of one particular caste. In this case, it was the Rajputs, right, in Rajasthan. And they were interviewed by this Hindi news channel, and one of them brought a sword, and he was just chilling he brought a sword onto set, and he just whipped out the sword. He was just holding it on set. If you want, I can send you the video.
Well, I was like, yeah, we can watch it on stream.
I would actually like to see that.
Okay, yeah,
I mean, it sounds like you guys got your own Proud Boys. Honestly, that's what it's right.
I got you on. Where do you want me to send it?
You can just put it in the private chat, probably.
Yeah, put it in the StreamYard private chat.
Oh, let me Karni Sena. Yeah, this is just an example of how crazy like news can get. Where is it? Karni Sena sword. Yeah, here you go.
You said American news is more boring than the news there.
Yeah, it is. That's an absolute fact. Like, I'm sorry to say this.
Don't be sorry. I mean,
that's saying something.
I want boring news. Please don't give me entertaining news.
Okay, that's the clip. So if you this is one of my favorite clips to show everyone. It's fantastic. For the record, I do not speak Hindi because I'm from the state of Tamil Nadu. So like we have like known to like resist the imposition of Hindi. So most of us in Tamil Nadu do not actually speak Hindi whatsoever. So we don't understand anything. I mean, we can kind of make out what's going on here. Yeah. So yeah, just play that.
इतिहास के पन्नों में दर्ज है।
कब
इतिहास के पन्नों में दर्ज है। हजार रानियों के साथ उन्होंने जौहर किया था।
मैं मान भी करता हूं
He
कि आप
cheats
इतिहास
it.
पढ़ते हैं, आप
Nice.
पढ़ते हैं इतिहास, आप कहां से
In the
पढ़े?
newsroom?
क्या पढ़ा?
Yeah, he's in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it was an undercovered aspect from you. that like I thought there was like a man on the street interview. I didn't realize they were in the studio.
Inside the studio.
No.
Inside the
Taking it
science.
out
Brought
of
a sword into the studio.
Oh man, he studied
Oh
the
my
blade. You can
God.
tell.
And was
Look
this
at
like
that.
an intimidation tactic or
Okay, I'll explain what the context of this is. So basically, there's a movie called Padmavati. Well, it used to be called Padmavati, but there's a huge like controversy over it because these guys got pissed. The guys in the turbans you're seeing right now, they got very. And then the guy in the host is like, why are you guys like having a sword? Is that really? He's literally asking them like, oh, is this really necessary? Do you really need to have a sword in the studio? Like, what is the use of this? He's just calmly asking like, what is the point of having a sword, right?
we want to know?
And what's the answer?
What's the? I don't. So the reason they're in the sword, they brought the sword in is like they're threatening to basically like behead an actress and a director.
Oh my God.
And the reason that they're threatening to be is a very famous actress like Deepika Padukone, and she acted in the movie called Padmavat, and Padmavat is a movie about basically these guys, the Rajputs, and how they're fighting the Delhi Sultanate, which is Muslims, right? Turkish Muslim, Central Asian Muslims or whatever, right? And there's a dream sequence wherein the Muslim king or the Muslim ruler falls in love with the Rajput Hindu princess. And so these guys are bent out of shape about that. And so they're like, they have dishonored the Rajputs. They have dishonored our caste. They have dishonored the pride of the Rajputs. And we're going to, and they're burning effigies of Deepika Padukone and Sanjay Leela Bansali. So they're basically threatening to behead the director and the
actor.
Wait,
Wow.
did the Chiron just say, like, are they allowed to threaten them? Call in now to tell us or something?
Yeah, I was about to say. I was about to say. You said this is crazier than a news over here. But listen, that's a lot like C-SPAN.
That is crazy.
Like this your calls live.
That they can really call for, or sit just regular
too,
folks can, just because of the caste system and they're part of it and they felt like they were disrespected, they can sit there and basically a threat on national news and threaten to behead someone. Just sit there and be like, yeah, like pull up when we see you.
That's wild.
Decapitation. What?
With a sword, no less.
I mean, these guys are like well known. Karni Sen is known for being like goons, like thugs, basically. And the thing about Rajputs is that I think they're considered Kshatriya or whatever. Like they're considered like second, like in the overall Chaturvarna system, right? The food pyramid thing that you've seen. So they're like Rajputs. They have not all Rajputs, okay? I have Rajputs in my community, so not all of them. You guys aren't all crazy, but there's a reputation that Rajputs have about being proud of being like a warrior clan or whatever. They talk about like, oh, we were these warrior, like, you know, glorious warriors. We fought against the Mughals and we fought against the Muslims. Now the irony of it all is that the Rajputs were the first ones to capitulate to the Mughals.
Oh, really?
They were the first ones to capitulate to the Mughals. And on top of that, many Rajputs actually married into the Mughals, which is why if you cross the border into Pakistan, you'll have people in Pakistan, like across the border, whose last name is Rajput. So there are Rajputs that eventually converted to Islam. And that's why you have Muslims in Pakistan with the last name Rajput. I know people with the last name Rajput because of that. So they were some of the first to capitulate. So that's an ongoing meme in India. There's like tons of clips like this. Like there's another clip of primetime news where, if you want, I can show that as well. Where is a classic clip. They bring on a dude from Pakistan and they're the dude, and they bring on a dude, obviously from India, and it's basically a dude from India and a dude from Pakistan, like shitting on each other, basically saying,
No.
"Oh, well, I'll destroy your country. No, I'll destroy your country. I'll destroy."
Oh, I thought you meant literally.
Yes.
Literally.
I didn't until you went, "Oh no," and then I was like, "Oh wait, does he mean literally?"
Yeah, because you said crazy, and I'm like, okay, so they're doing this for real.
The expectations are high after the sword
Yeah,
thing. So.
I was like, they
How do you went up
really,
it?
they doing okay. No, but you meant going in on each other. Okay.
Yeah, they go at each other. Yeah, they're not trying to kill each other. That'd be a bit too much. But I would say that was too much. But the sword is like, I don't know. I mean, the other thing is like, it's not as easy to get guns in India, so swords are a lot easier to brandish. But yeah, so is
That's crazy.
the one good thing that Modi has actually done. He's actually made it harder for people to get guns in India,
which is good. But the sword, just walking around like, yeah, play with it. I will stick this through your, like, that's crazy. And then taking it to the news station because of what you represent, and you can literally sit there, and then they have this question like, should they be able to behead these
Call in now.
Oh yeah, no, like so that goes back to like what Indian mainstream news is. Like they basically, like you saw on John Oliver, they ask like softball questions, and they've become basically nothing more, but they've become nothing more than sheer entertainment. Another great example is like this guy called Arun Goswami. And Arun Goswami is you can kind of think of him as Tucker Carlson plus Alex Jones plus Bill O'Reilly plus what's his name, Sean Hannity, all rolled into one.
I don't like him already.
So, but he is so
yeah, it's not even a nightmare
known for like
rotation.
yelling, like he's known for he's known for creating shouting matches, like at you know, on these news shows, and it's just pure entertainment. Like it's like, and it's ironically like people are like, oh, you're like, John said something to the effect of, John Oliver said something to the effect of like, oh no, you're scaring old people. No, that's where he's wrong. They're targeting old people. That's why. That's why there's all these loud sound effects and like everyone's shouting, because they're targeting old people. That's the, like, you ask any particular Indian dude, Indian like person like my generation, their parents are watching like Republic. A lot of parents are watching Republic TV, and their grandparents are watching Republic TV, right? They're all watching that, right? And they will tell you straight up, like, their parents are watching Republic TV 100%. And like that's the reason, like they make it, you know, stupid, like they make it incredibly dumb, mindless, like, and also it's like obviously the ideological slant is like they love Modi. Modi's like the perfect human being. Modi during the course of the election said, like, towards the final I guess towards the end of the election season, because like elections actually last like 2 months. They go by phases. There's not one election day. So there's like multiple phases where different regions vote, right? So towards the end of that overall election phase, Modi unironically came out and said, I was not born biologically. I did not have a biological birth because God sent me to this planet. That's why I have so much energy. The only way I can have this, I cannot have energy like this at this age because of a biological birth. No, God has specifically sent me to Earth, right?
So is it like a Superman thing or a Jesus thing?
Jesus.
Okay.
It's 100% Jesus. And so do people, like, because it's, I mean, if we're going to, just hearing about this, in India, like, I'm Haitian, so I know the politics over there is crazy, but never heard about like what's happening in India. So, it just gives, when he says that, immediately I think of, the followers and people who, believe in him. Like the person said, they need to have a race of little Modis around. Is it cult-like? Like, can it be really extreme past just the caste, but just really extreme people fighting others over what he's saying? They believe that he actually is somebody who was sent by God and not by, because they believe crazy things like that. So
I mean, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, it's is the cult of personality of Modi, is it like does it get to dangerous levels?
Yes. Even with stupidity like that, like what he claims.
There's probably like a couple stories that I've covered at some point that have slipped my mind at the moment, but like, yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I have a confident answer on that. And I'm going to answer one of the comments in the chat. You don't live in India, do you? Of course I don't live in India. Like, what am I going to do? Risk my neck? Are you crazy? What am I going to do? Like for a long time, it's been an impressive bloody atmosphere. Like for journalists, like India ranked below, what was it? Palestine, Turkey, I think even Somalia. India's ranked below in terms of press freedom.
Wow.
India's press freedom is significantly worse than Palestine, and that should say something.
They don't want journalists to cover, like, anything. It's like kind of forbidden to be somebody who shares information that may possibly be in a way that presents the leader as bad, or presenting information to the people outside of what they want people to know.
Bingo. So, I mean, I'll give an example of this, right? So there's a guy called Sadiq Kapan, right? From the state of Kerala. And there was a gang rape case, gang sexual assault case that happened in the state of Uttar Pradesh. He went to go investigate it. And he was put in jail for 2 years because he went to go investigate it. It was a rape case against a marginalized caste girl, actually, not even woman, right? It was a gang rape case against a Dalit person. And he went to go investigate it, and he got put in jail. He had like trumped up corruption, like what was it, financial charges or something, and everyone knew it was fake. Everyone knows that they wanted to put him in jail to make sure that to send a message basically saying like, hey, don't you dare, do not even try this.
Wow.
There was a journalist, Gauri Lankesh, that was assassinated in Karnataka, just straight up assassinated. It's an incredibly oppressive. Like there are some opinions that you can't even voice out loud in India. Like you cannot. There are people that I know that have very progressive opinions on Kashmir, but they're not able to actually voice it because of how like the Indian state will treat them. Like if they say it, like they're scared of like what the kind of repercussions that will happen, because there's a law on the books called the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, right? And it's basically an incredibly draconian law that was on the books like several decades ago. Predates BJP, but basically it's an anti-terrorism law that can be abused, and it is abused to basically lock up people that they suspect of being terrorists or being aiding and abetting terrorists. And there are many people that were locked up. There were many activists that were locked up. An example of someone that was just released was GN Sai Baba. And they accused him of having links to the Maoists in India, the Naxals in India, the Maoist movement, which at this point is a dead movement. The Maoists have no sort of traction whatsoever. They're basically dead at this point, right? No one talks about them, and in mainstream Indian, or at least in mainstream Indian discourse, the Maoists are basically just nothing more than a what do you call it, like a scapegoat, or like a tool used to fearmonger against people. So another thing that people will call you is like, if you're a progressive, they'll call you an urban Naxal, right? So they're insinuating that if you're progressive in any particular way, you're a city dwelling like Naxal Maoist sort of person. And weirdly enough, unlike America, India never had a Red Scare to begin with. Like if you try and bring up like, oh, you're a socialist, like, oh, you're a communist, like a couple of decades ago, they'd be like, yeah, of course I am. And there are people even in Tamil Nadu, like example, there's a guy called Annamalai, who's a BJP guy who lost, and he's basically an utter clown. He's kind of like our Eric Adams in a sense, but significantly funnier, because I just saw.
I doubt that.
No, he's way funnier. I get no. From what I've seen of Eric Adams and what I've seen of this guy, no, this dude's way funnier than Eric Adams. Like straight up comedian. Dude basically he's talking about a case he was on. He was just describing the plot of a movie, basically. So he made up he was basically making up a case. No, the case is actually real, but the way he narrated it was like it was just straight out of a movie, and like people placed the actual movie plot next to what he was saying. So it was super funny, and he's crazy. No one likes him. Like no one likes him where I'm from, right? But he's like an AstroTurf candidate. But a lot of people, even though this dude's a BJP guy, he's a fascist, he's a cop, right? One of the things that people used to praise him was that he's a quote unquote socialist. So for even today, socialism is not a dirty term in India. It's not a very like dirty term in the same way that it is in the United States, right? Communist, socialist, it's not a huge it's not a bad word to say in India in the same sense. But the sort of there is a kind of red scare in India, and that is as a result of the Naxals. And that is because the Naxals have killed innocent people through their activities. Now, again, the Naxals exist precisely due to the horrific conditions that the indigenous people of India, the Adivasis, are put through. But part of the Red Scare was sort of due to the some of the tactics that the Maoists use in India, the Naxals used. So they use that. So if there is a semblance of a Red Scare, and they're like, "Oh, you're progressive," they'll specifically reference the Naxals. They'll specifically reference the Naxalites, basically.